This watch is over 60 years old, but now it not only came back to life from the grave it was in, but it also sets itself automatically by connecting to the internet. This watch is very special. I've known it for a very long time and I always wanted one. I never bought it as it was very expensive. The price ranges between $2,000 and $3,000 for a used one, obviously because a new one no longer exists. It's made by Solari in Udine, Italy. This company is famous for making all kinds of clocks and signs in this style. In fact, it's found in numerous airports. A while ago, I found someone on Facebook selling it for $400, but I negotiated the price down to $300, a small fraction of what it's really worth, so I bought it. It looked in very bad condition, but my idea was to restore it. When I got home, I realized why it was so cheap. I saw it coming, so I wasn't too surprised, but, well, when I opened the watch, it was completely empty. It had none of the original mechanism. It only had the numbers, let's say the ones that were visible in the photo. I decided it was an excellent opportunity to rebuild it. The original mechanism was impossible to get, and even less to rebuild since the only thing I knew about it was from a few photos I found on the internet. No manuals or anything like that, so I said, let's rebuild it, but using technology that we have these days. But it had a small system that made 3 of them move on their own when the number next to it reached 9. For example, from 19 to 20, the one moved to 2 automatically. So we had 5 numbers to somehow rotate. The numbers were quite easy to rotate. They had a small gear at one end to make them rotate. That's why I chose to use these little motors. These 5-volt motors have a reduction box that increases their strength. They are special because they are step-by-step, allowing precise rotation. Similar motors are used in 3D printers. To utilize them, I designed and 3D printed 2 gears using Grelon's PETG filament. One gear is placed on the motor, and the other replaces the original on the numbers axis. 3. The brand I always choose because so far it has never failed me in anything. I used 5 motors, 1 for each number, and placed them in the clock using arms that I also designed. I attached these arms to the support where the original clock mechanisms went, although I had to make a couple of modifications because they didn't fit, such as wearing down and removing some things. One detail is that both the numbers and the entire structure of the clock were made of iron and aluminum, and everything is quite heavy too. It's very curious how it works. Each number has a metal guide behind it that makes the numbers rotate in an orderly manner, so that the plates also do not stick to each other. And in the corner, each one has a spring that pushes the plates so that they are perfectly straight when displayed. Once all the motors were in place, I needed to control them. For that, I used a mini PC, in this case, an ESP32, which was used to program everything I needed in C. The idea was very simple. I had to set the clock, and then the mini PC would make each minute move one of the plates, and that's it. How would it calculate how much to move the plate? Very easy. A full rotation of the number is 10 minutes. So if one rotation, that is 360 degrees, is 10 minutes, each minute would correspond to 36 degrees. I just had to move the motor those degrees, and it would have moved 1 minute. But there were many problems with this. The first and most important is this. In case you didn't see it, I'll leave it here again. After spinning many times, let's say about 30 turns, the clock was either falling behind or getting ahead by a number, as the motor movements were not entirely accurate, and with each turn it was moving a little bit. This is very bad because in a clock we can't have a variation of, for example, 1 hour. To solve this, I put a Hall sensor, or rather a magnetism sensor, and on the axis of the number, I put a magnet that I recycled from an old motor. How does this work? I put the magnet on the number 0. So when the sensor detects the magnet, it means that the number is at 0. Knowing this, I can turn the number 36 degrees just like before, but I can make it so that when it changes from 9 to 0, Or in other words, when it completes a full turn, it doesn't do it by measuring the degrees, but simply turns the number until it detects the magnet. In this way, it would be self-calibrating. These new sensors gave me a new idea. I could make the clock set the time by itself. I added more sensors to the other numbers, that is, a total of 8 sensors, and using the mini PC, I made it get the time from the internet. Knowing the time and using the sensors, it was very easy to set the time by itself. It simply made the motors turn continuously. Remember, we have 2 sensors per hour and 2 per minute. And if both sensors are detecting magnetism, it means that the number is at 0, 0, once at 000, 0. I simply made the numbers turn again until they reach their corresponding number. In short, setting the time. I explained it simply, but for those interested, I'll leave the code in the description to clarify doubts, as it's quite interesting. What I do know is each motor used 4 wires, each sensor 3 wires, and that, among other things, it turned into a mess of wires. I organized them effectively, and the result was impressive. It was functioning well, and I only needed to make aesthetic improvements. Starting with the basics, I cleaned it up, and it already looked significantly better. The tough part was that this clock originally had a cover with a glass frame, and since it didn't have it, it looked horrible. I repaired the sheet metal by sanding and filling dents and scratches with car filler. Once smooth, I painted it black, thinking it looked nicer. For the frame, the first thing I did was measure the glass I needed, considering the curves at the ends, and I sent it to be cut at a place where they could cut the glass already curved. Luckily, the glass turned out very well. Now I wanted to recreate the frame. Since I didn't have a way to manufacture it, I came up with a very good solution. Using a black vinyl, I first stuck it all over the glass, then I roughly marked how the original frame would be and cut it. I used a box cutter for the straight cuts, and for the curves, I used a curve cutter, which I really didn't know existed, and I thought was really crazy. This is how it turned out. In my opinion, I love it. And on top of that, it was easy and quick to do. To finish, this clock came with some factory lights. In this case, I placed LED strips where the original lights were, which obviously were not there, and I also connected these to a mini PC. Since the LEDs are smart, I used WLED to be able to handle them. WLED is an open source project to handle LED strips. On their page, they have a very good tutorial on how to install everything. And basically, it creates a website where you enter and you can handle the lights, even with effects and everything. This is how my clock turned out, and this is how it sounds. The sound is one of my favorite aspects of these clocks. It's very distinctive and relaxing to me. I especially enjoy watching it at 23:59 when all the numbers change simultaneously. Thanks for watching. See you next time.